What is the most shameful thing you've nutted to? So many levels of shame. Super horny 13-year-old in the early 90s. No porn at all because the internet wasn't everywhere back then. We lived in a 2-story house and the neighbor behind us was in a 1-story house. Single mother. 2 kids, boy and girl. Boy and I became friends. Met his mom a couple times. What they didn't know was that I kept spying on them. I already said shameful. No blinds or curtains in the back windows. Which were the kitchen, dining room and bathroom. The bathroom windows were frosted. But you could make out shapes. And it was obvious when mom was in there because of her height and figure. So, seeing the bathroom light come on and seeing her figure disrobe was an instant hard-on for a 13-year-old. One Saturday night I go to my room. I lay down and spy on the house. My buddy said that he and his sister were going to their dad's for the weekend. Mom will be alone. In my horny mind, I thought this would be a weekend of her walking around naked. So far disappointed. I spy in the dim dining room some action. I watch what I think is some aggressive fucking in the dining room. I start beating my meat. I think it is about time the neighbor mom gets some action. And about time that I can watch it. Keep in mind that I have not yet actually seen porn. And not actually seen anyone have sex. So, it should be of no surprise to learn that what I had seen wasn't the MILF getting plowed on her dining room table, but a houseplant being affected by the oscillating fan. Her kids went away because it was warm and her AC went out. I had jacked off to a houseplant. Blew some shameful L's when younger. Top 3. Nutting to the sound of my neighbors having sex, but quite quickly it was apparent they were actually having a huge crying, screaming argument and in the end stages of breaking up. Balls and soul were empty after that. 13/14 being locked outside the house after school. Using the time up to beat the shit out of my dick in broad daylight in the back garden. So risky. Licking my aunt's huge-titted statue ladies in her top hallway when I was maybe 11/12. I licked on they poor gal's titties for a whole summer. Pre-internet. Obviously. I wasn't a weirdo. Do dreams count? Because my very first wet dream as a teen was with a triceratops for some reason. The dream wasn't even sexual. Edit. Great. My most upvoted comment of all time is about a wet dream with a dinosaur. Jerked off to what I thought was a couple one room over having sex. After hearing the closing shutdown sounds of windows and immediately hearing all sex noises stop, I realized that I had jacked off to another guy jacking off to porn on his laptop. A Lara Croft action figure bent over on the back of a toilet. A ladder. I was 17. Home alone. Eating dinner and it was just propped up in the corner after we had painted the ceiling and were too lazy to put it back. The thought came into my head and I climbed it. Jacked off and then sat back down to finish my dinner wondering what the fuck is wrong with me. Somebody please tell me they have the Reddit post saved where a guy accidentally beat it to Holocaust footage lol. When I was a teen I had a friend with a hot mother. Short version of the story is that I stole a public hair from her underwear in the laundry basket. Took it home and sellotaped it to an explicit drawing I made of her. Then masturbated to that. Edit. Thank you kind strangers for the awards. I'm just a little sad that I can't tell my wife about my successful day on Reddit skeptical smiley face. I'm surprised I'm admitting this. Even if I decided to use my NSFW account. However, a weird porno involving a female alien in Area 51. Not just some lady in green paint either. Full-on freaky gray-headed, black-eyed alien. I was really pushing the limits that day. Post-nut clarity hit me hard. The Sims. I was watching one of those late-night documentaries on an African tribe. They weren't wearing clothes and I was 13. Titties are still titties, right? The shameful part is that I was watching the doco in anticipation of said titties. Was on video chat in high school. Back in like 2013-2014. With this girl who had serious depression issues. I could tell she was moving her hand in a weird way. And I thought to myself, damn. Is she touching herself? I will too then. So I started touching myself and things got quiet but we carried on a somewhat convo. Just showing face. And after I finished very fast being a teen I asked her how she was feeling and she said I can't stop scratching my cut scars. Stripper in GTA 4 cold sweat smile. Took too much LSD in college in Boulder. Walked all the way to the Flatirons at sunrise and got lost in the woods. A voluptuous tree was waving and calling my name. I walked over, hugged her, kissed her, and then came in my pants. I was doing no fap for like several weeks and was so horny that I just decided to hump the counter. Wasn't even thinking about anything. The thrusting just made me nut. Actually, you know what? Just touching my stomach a little gets me off. It's really weird, so maybe that could work. Jessica Rabbit beach towel we bought from Disney World. I masturbated to the bad words in the dictionary when I was like 10. Sex. Orgasm. Penis. It was a wet dream and involved a prison. An illustration in the AD&D Monster Manual. Edit. For those asking, it was the first Ed Nereid flushed grimace disappointed. Man, not me, but I work in construction and I had a coworker who always used to watch porn in the porta potty and rub one out every break. One day he comes up to me freaking out asking to use my phone at break because his was dead. Of course I said no. We both come back from break and he's calm as I've ever seen him. I ask him jokingly, "Did you get your phone to charge?" He says, "No. I just closed my eyes and rubbed my own nipple." This dude got off on rubbing his own nipple in a porta potty. A picture of a family member at the beach in a thong. I was 13 at the time and had nothing better to look at. It's gonna be this post in about 39 seconds. A curvy piece of driftwood. This thought sometimes haunts me. When I was in late primary school, I'd watch sex videos on YouTube because I didn't know Pornhub at that time. I never knew that what you watched would continue to be recommended on the side of videos you were watching. I never thought about deleting history either. Unfortunately, my family had a gathering for a Christmas party and my mom asked if she could stream a YouTube video from my computer for everyone. In front of my entire extended family, I had all these cartoon character sex recommendations appear. Nobody said anything. I will never know if they saw. I see so many entries from guys talking about their early shameful experiences. Here's one from a gal. As a 10 to 11-year-old, I just got my first phone. It was a Nokia flip phone. But it felt super advanced. It was one of the first ones with access to the internet. And I knew what sex was. But didn't really know how to find actual porn. And the mobile version of the websites took forever to load. I wound up grinding on one of my stuffed animals to a text post about a girl who fucked herself with carrots and potatoes and shampoo bottles. Then I eventually found a few photos with boobs in them. I humped my big stuffed animals like a dog. Then the phone company called my mom. I hadn't realized that the browsing cost money. And I had somehow managed to rack up almost $800 in data browsing bills. This was in around 2008. Before most data plans, I believe. At least for us. My mom didn't believe it was possible and said there must have been a mistake. And luckily they reversed the charges after some of her somehow miracle levels of charm and persuasion. She asked me about it and I broke down and told her I was looking at porn and masturbating. I distinctly remember her saying, "Well, this talk is happening at least 3 years before I expected it to." So yeah, 10-year-old me basically ruined a few stuffed animals to an old-school internet mobile text website about a girl who fucked herself with vegetables. Almost cost my mom $800. And have had to live with that shame forever. Griffith from Berserk, 'cause I thought it was a girl. The cheerleader from the cutscene in Tecmo Bowl for NES. People have it easy now. Before the internet you had to be creative. I know JCPenney catalogs were pretty popular. They had the underwear section. Sports Illustrated Swimsuit Edition. It was a better magazine before the internet. R-rated movies that had sex scenes. I grew up in the 90s. We had cable TV, a basic channel package. If you don't pay for certain channels, when you turn it to that channel the image has a lot of static and mixed up colors. Well, there was a channel I believe was Cinemax back then. I could be wrong on the name. Very late at night they had porn videos. But if you didn't have the channel, like I said, it had a lot of static. I would stay up late until that came on, usually midnight or 1 a.m. if I remember correctly. You could kind of hear moaning and other sex noises. Anyways, every once in a while the static would line up just right so you could catch a glimpse of something. Maybe it was a boob or maybe it was an ankle. You never knew, you just had to kind of pretend it was a boob and go from there. Lol. I'm sure I'm not the only one who did this. My ex. Oye vey, let's see. When I was a teen and Sum 41 came out with their music video to Fat Lip. This tiny scene that's like 4 seconds of this girl dancing. At the 2:49 mark, face with hand over mouth. When I was probably 12-13, my family had just gotten Wi-Fi for the first time. But it was the very beginning of Wi-Fi and it was awful. I had the upstairs room and couldn't download porn on my iPod. It would take ages. So instead I would go to the family computer, right in the middle of the living room, and download entire porn comics. The printer was old and would take a solid 45 seconds for each page. All while trying to be secretive. By the time I threw them away I had easily upwards 500 pages, all totally worn, of course. I was so ashamed of my bootleg porn comics that I snuck them on a family trip and sneakily threw them away when the family stopped at the Vince Lombardi rest stop in New Jersey. Edit. I thought I might also add that while being old and slow, the printer was also loud as a hell. So in the dead of night I would print out the pages, hoping it never woke anyone. I used to volunteer at a Ren fair with my dad when I was 13 to 15. I loved it. Got to wear a kilt. Carry a real sword that was blunted. And felt like I fit in somewhere. If you've ever been to one, you know many women who dress up and go to Ren fairs wear corsets. My aunt being one of them. And she made sure to show off what she had. Well, as a young teenager thinking with his dick. I didn't care that she was my aunt. I cared that she had big tits and a well-made corset. A topless girl at the beach one time in Spain. I was looking at her from the water. To myself nutting. One time out of sheer curiosity I filmed myself yanking it so I could watch it back and see if I looked sexy when I was on the job. I watched it back later that night and had the weirdest nut. It was hot in the weirdest way. I discovered I was bi that day. All of this is so tame. I just now realized how much a fucked up horny teen I was. I had an ex admit the first thing he ever jerked off to was Princess Diana on the cover of Time magazine. Thoughts about my ex's mom. This is not the worst thing I have nutted to. But the thing that gave me the most shame. I was 14 and had access to internet porn at this time. But I was living with my grandma temporarily and had been busted a couple months earlier and was not allowed to use the computer. I was organizing the gun cabinet when I found these Polaroids under a false bottom of the cabinet. To me it looked like the pictures weren't touched for years because of how stuck together they were. I opened them up and after seeing a few family pictures I uncover a handful of images with a naked woman. I couldn't tell who the woman was. But my 14-year-old mind and dick didn't care. I retired my 2008 Maxim Hot 100 magazine and nutted to these pictures multiple times a day for the rest of the summer. 2 weeks before I was supposed to go home I get back to my grandma's house after a day of fishing with my cousins. I open the door and my grandpa starts whooping my ass. And asks me how I got those pictures. Why we're covered in cum. That he is going to cut my dick off. And tells me that they were pictures of my grandma. Needless to say it was a very quiet 3-hour drive home after my mom picked me up. I was grounded for a whole year. And I still haven't seen my grandparents to this day. Edit. I was also raised Mormon and my grandparents are still very religious. Shame for years. I was just masturbating and my therapist popped up into my head, then I came so yeah. Family reunion VHS tape face with spiral eyes. That weird sex scene from that movie Splice. Markiplier's World Quietest Let's Play. This while going through Reddit looking for good porn. My lawyer advised me not to participate in this thread. I was texting with a friend and she mistakenly typed the word cum. Teenage me. Or at least my teenage hormones. Didn't care that it was a typo. I jerked off to a typo. My reflection. The Queen's funeral. I can't wait to come back to this thread after a day or two to check the kind of degeneration that an unbonked horny mind can do to a person. Fredericks of Hollywood catalog I stole from my neighbor while I was cat-sitting. I was younger. Went on vacation and had no internet or porn. So I drew a picture of boobs and a butt and completed my mission. Minecraft. Yeah, I'm weird. I had this porn star that I loved as a teen. Always nutted to her videos and all until a few years later I learned that she's my aunt that we disassociated because she does porn. When the camera changes angles and you're busting to some guy's bare butt balls and back. A really nice proof of the Leibniz formula for pi. Edit. Of course my top comment is about jerking off to a math proof. You never fail to disappoint. Reddit. People getting pied in the face on game shows. I was about 14 when I had my gay awakening. Up until that point I had never once flirted with a guy and was going through a lot of bullying at school. I went to my friend's house and met her hot brother who told me I had a really cool hoodie and did that straight guy handshake thing. That night I nutted to the memory of being treated nicely. I think about that day a lot. Edit. Grammar, wording check. A BJ vid where a lady, no teeth, just deep throats a dude in his car non-stop. Ashamed to say I'm getting hard just thinking about it. Not nutted. But I had a one-night stand in Greece. After we met in a bar we wanted to have some privacy and went to the beach that was a couple of 100 meters away. We searched for a secluded spot and decided to go skinny dipping. This was after 30 minutes when we first met. You can imagine how horny she and myself were. We fooled around in the water. But the actual deed was too difficult with the waves and tide. We decided that the beach was a better spot. So I laid her down and went on top of her. We were all in the moment when I suddenly felt something wet on my ass. I didn't realize directly that it couldn't be the girl. But after a couple of seconds it was sinking in that it couldn't. When I looked to the back of my ass, I saw that it was a stray dog liking my behind. Using my NSFW account for obvious reasons. So when I was around 13-14, I was an absolute menace to society, popping a stiffy almost every hour on the hour. Sometimes these went away quick. Other times I had to beat it like an arcade cabinet. I had done it in the car while pretending to read Harry Potter. I did it in the school bathrooms right after gym. And almost all of it was without any cell phone, which meant I had to use other means. Family computer. Spare bit of a Playboy. And of course the good old-fashioned imagination. Now here's where it gets more shameful. You see, the DSi had an internet browser and although it couldn't play video it could definitely load images. Which meant I was reading both erotica and hentai, shout out to hentai. Ms. for most of my teenage nuts and computer viruses. So when I was at a friend's house, after he had passed out and I was the only one awake, I whipped out Ol Reliable and cranked it to some hentai. Fuda. Femboy. Step-siblings and mother, I did it all while he was asleep and I was on a bedroll yanking away into the night. Come next morning he's avoiding eye contact with me and I'm confused why until it hits me. He usually snores when he sleeps. He wasn't snoring last night. Still friends with that dude and I'm amazed how we still are. Not proud. Actually depressed, but photos of my ex. We ended badly. We weren't able to communicate and didn't understand each other. I wish we were on better terms. I wouldn't call it a thing, but once my ex sent her family picture to me. I nutted to her sisters. More than once. During the pandemic I got into some weird shit. Got broken up with and it started with audios of getting reassurance. I think you can imagine where it went, but it definitely got worse before I snapped out of it and realized I was spending more time in a deluded daydream versus getting over my issues. The Nintendo Power cover for the game Jet Force Gemini. Ursula from Little Mermaid Skull. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop a like. If you would like to see more content like this in the future, subscribe and turn on notifications to be notified about future videos. Now check out one of these interesting videos.